I will call the Joint Finance, Facilities, and Operations Education, Technology, and Student Services Committee meeting to order. We'll start with a Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The first item on the agenda tonight is the approval of the July 9th Finance, Facilities, and Operations Committee minutes. Do I have a motion? Mr. Elsier, and a second. Mr. Lewis. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the minutes stand. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is public comment. Is there any public comment tonight? No public comment. Thank you. So in tonight's presentation and discussion section of the meeting, we'll be hearing about the update on the 18-19 end of year budget results, and then we will spend the rest of the time working on mission, vision, and goals, led by Dr. Bedden. I was looking for you. And Mr. Okay, and the team. Very good, very good. Okay, so we'll start with the update on the end of year results. Mrs. Clouser?
This is basically an update from what Ms. Pitts went over at the last voting board meeting. Just where we are again, it is preliminary. There are still accruals that need to be made, and it's not technically final till the auditors are done. So the first slide. For the revenue side, the preliminary as of June 30th, 19, shows our total revenue, the actual of $117,557,701, which is approximately $306,000 under budget. Up under the other local revenue, the largest area where that was over was the earned income tax. On the state revenue side, the $876,000 under budget, the largest part was the one grant that was double counted in the budget. On the expenditure side, as of this date and time, the preliminary actual amount is $116,754,105 for under budget and expenditures of $1,885,092. The largest is salaries and benefits, which we mentioned before was due to a significant amount of turnover and vacancies throughout the district that will need to be filled with people in those positions. So the net amount for the 2018-19 is an excess for the year of approximately $804,000. And again, this will change till we finalize it by the end of the audit. One of the other slides we wanted to put in here is just to show out of our budget for the 1920 fiscal year how much we spend on certain items. Salaries, benefits, and professional services, we included CRES in there because they're no longer considered our employees, but it still is related to salaries and benefits of those employees. That takes up 76% of our budget. The next highest percentage is purchase services of 13%, other of 6%, and the debt service that is at 5%. The other amount and the purchase services are detailed out more to the right to break it down to areas where they are what we're calling limited flexibility or controllable costs. Things like the transportation contract, which we already awarded, the VOTEC costs, chartered school tuition of $2,275,000, non-public school tuition of $2,170,000, utilities of close to $1.4 million. Those are things that are not don't have as much flexibility of reducing. And in the little chart down at the bottom, it shows you the other variable costs, the costs that we can try to decrease and change, is at 4% of the total budget of $5,858,000. One of the things we also wanted to present to the board is what you can do with that tentative preliminary excess. You can commit your fund balance. The PDE regulations are that your unassigned fund balance may not exceed 8% of your budget expenditures. So for the fiscal year 6/30/19, that would equate to $9,491,136. So right now with that approximately 800,000 excess, our preliminary projected ending unassigned fund balance is 7,884,310, which still does not exceed the regulations. So we could choose to commit that excess for a specific purpose. Some possible commitments that we noted here was in the information technology area, the E-rate purchases. The board did approve $320,000 towards those purchases, but we needed to find a place to fund that. That could be one area that could go towards. And then another would be to put that towards the roof projects that were approved for the 1920 year, that total $1.326 million. So that's just something to consider going forward for once we do finally close out the year. And that's it. Any questions?
Are there any questions from the board?
Yes, just appreciate the good news. It's better to have excess than and be in the black, so to speak, as opposed to being in the red. And I know it's not final, but it's preliminarily some good news. And to your point, a lot of it was due to the turnover and the vacancy. So, you know, kind of a double-edged sword there, I guess. But thank you so much for that update.
Seeing no other questions, thank you very much for that presentation. And then we'll turn it over to our mission, vision, and goals presentation.
Good evening. Just to bring a little bit of context of why we're here in this type of presentation, based on the, most people think of finance and operations and things not related to the vision, mission, and goals. But part of the presentation to the board has been around the conversation that we have to have a closer alignment between our teaching and learning department and that being where we decide how to spend our money. And so we thought it was a good idea to first show the work that's being done, because what's being done now should influence where we spend our money, and then ultimately be how we make decisions on what we call strategic abandonment, which is when you make decisions to stop doing something, and then strategic inclusion, which are those things that you're going to either continue to do and or that you're going to build upon to expand or add addition to. For example, the student to counselor ratio would be a strategic inclusion into the budget for a purpose that would support teaching and learning. Each of you received an executive summary that hopefully laid out some of how we got here and where we're trying to go. This presentation, I must say, and the work that's been done, was significantly a work of a labor of love by Mr. Stout and his team, and then ultimately the principals, because I was very impressed with having the new structure put in place in that department, and then meeting with his core team and laying out the expectations. And then Dr. Barrow walked in my office one day, and I was working on the presentation, and she said, "You can stop, Dr. Benton." And I said, "What do you mean I can stop?" She said, "They already did it for you." And literally, she says, you guys are like typing the same thing in separate rooms. Where is she? Not exact words, but that was your point. She's like, so they came over, and I sat and I looked at it, and I was like, oh God, that's eerie. And then they were typing literally the same thing. So I will say that Ms. Jones and Ron, Mr. Wales, and the new structure have been like the dynamic duo so far. And so there was a lot of let's get it done, and then there was a lot of give and take as we tried to get us back where best practices are recommended by the NSBA and PSBA with regard to having a clear vision, mission, goals, and strategies, but most importantly in the governance conversation, training with the board, and to the public who may be listening or see this later, there is a commitment to be inclusive of the external and the internal constituents. Time was not our ally. So we had to build this off of where we believe there was a lot of invested time and energy from the community, internally and externally. So we built probably 90% of this off of what was done from the past. And then there's one piece that there really was not anything in place to build it off of. So we build it off of what the state says we should be doing. So when people say, well, how'd you come up with that? Well, it's not a Mr. Stout's statement. It's not a Dr. Bedden's statement. And then we also try to tie it to the outcomes that the state is reporting to the public, the Future Ready Index also, so that we don't have to build in-house a reporting mechanism to report to the public, but make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to do, what's already being reported to the public, along with everything else we still do that's beyond what we report publicly, that we still measure and monitor as a district. So this time, I'll introduce you again, Mr. Wells, who joined us as other teaching and learning specialist. So Mr. Wells, you'll kick it off and we'll tag team this. And then I think Mr. Stout or Dr. O'Barrow may chime in as needed through this conversation.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Oh, and I'm sorry, and I do want to thank all of the principals who spent a good time at the leadership retreat and their contribution to this. Some of the stuff they've done you won't see in this, but are behind the scenes. But also thank them for taking time out of their schedule for coming out. And if they're not here, it doesn't mean you don't think it's important. They were told if you had something planned, do not change your schedule. So if you don't see a face here, don't hold that against them. They were not mandated to be here. We asked them if they could be here, so those who are here could be here. Those who are not and their colleagues were very clearly told if you had something scheduled, do not change your schedule. So thank you.
All right, I'd like to thank my colleagues as well for showing their support and coming out to see this presentation, and thank you for allowing me to speak to you. I know you guys received the executive summary as well as the presentation you're going to see ahead of time, so I'm going to try and move through it as quickly as possible, but feel free to stop if you have any questions or anything like that. So as I leave that quote on the screen, I kind of want to emphasize the point, a few points that Dr. Bedden touched on, and really what we're doing here is not a reimagining of anything. It's more like an update, and it's a slight revision for the most part. Looking at some of the language that was already there, looking some of the intent that was already within the dashboard, which I'm going to reference at several points, and thinking about how that guiding document can offer us guidance for our future efforts and really focus us during challenging times. And some of that was written into the executive summary, how we all know that we're going through some challenging times, and to kind of reaffirm that guidance and reaffirm the vision and mission, and to have some clear articulation about that was really the guiding force, but also trying to have a spirit of fidelity to all the work that was already done. So when you look at the dashboard, this is the current layout of it, and we have physical copies here, and you have a copy up there. And you see this, it's all over the district. You have your mission statement, you have your priorities, you have your metrics of success, and you have your core values. So I'm going to talk about each of those components and the kind of freshening or update that we envisioned that can guide us forward in the future, and act really as, you know, a very valuable tool to help us make better informed decisions. And that's what this is really about. You know, to some, when we're doing this kind of work, it may seem like, oh, what is that about? It's very abstract. It's you know, it's not concrete. It's not like, couldn't you be doing something else with your time? But this really does, this type of articulation really does help us on a very concrete level make decisions that we have to make. And it's a guiding force for us on so many different levels that I hope to explain to you. So you guys were looking at the guidebook for NSBA, and part of what was guiding us were their recommendations. And you can look on the screen and see that they suggest both a vision and mission statement, because when you look at both of them together, they each have their separate role as a guiding force, and they fulfill a variety of criteria that help us make better informed decisions. And I'm not going to read through them all because I know you did already, but they're listed there. And each of them are necessary to kind of fill a void that might be there during the decision-making process. You know, the higher up you go with this, when you get into the vision, the more abstract it gets, and the layers that we have on that board make it more concrete for us. But each layer is necessary.
So the mission statement is an explanation of purpose, and it actually fulfills 4 criteria when it's written to the standards that you see across the state and that is recommended by school board associations like the NSBA. It gives us our purpose. It explains the need, tells us for whom we are fulfilling the need, and how that need will be met. So when you have a clearly articulated mission statement, you have all 4 of those prongs that are met within the statement. The vision turns an organization's core ideology or sense of purpose into an image of the future. So unlike those 4 prongs of the mission statement, the vision statement is the kind of ideal world we're trying to get to. It's the object, not necessarily the who or the how or the why. It's the object you want to build. Okay? So when we were examining the dashboard, we had, that framework in mind to try and get to that point and see if we actually had those things there. And again, some people may point to that and say, well, why are you worrying about this very abstract kind of like poetic, language? Because that poetry, that language helps us make decisions about exactly where we want to go. And if you look at different vision statements for different companies or different school districts that have a very specific niche in things, their vision statement and their mission statement, it provides them the guidance to make really tough choices. When you look at Amazon's vision statement and mission statement, they make a clear focus. Their focus is on the customer. And if they have to make a decision that's trying to balance the customer's needs against what the employee's needs, they have guidance on that. And so I'm just trying to speak to the importance of it. Vision for effective school boards, they establish a clear vision with high expectations for quality teaching and learning that supports strong student outcomes. And you see the language in there, the focus is on the student outcomes. And we really tried to, in our kind of, freshening up on of the update, really tried to make sure that everything we were pointing towards had the students in mind. Clear vision statement help establish clear and specific goals. Those goals then get articulated into building level targets, and that's where the rubber starts to hit the road and it becomes very concrete for your building level administrators to develop how they are going to move that forward with specific strategies. The vision's about the future. It's about what you're trying to build. Clearly, what are you trying to build? And that's what we were asking ourselves. What is the vision and what is the mission and how we're going to get there? The issue is that the vision isn't there. We know it's there. It is there, but it's not stated. And so if you don't have the end in mind, the progress that you're trying to move for loses a referent. It loses a point at which you can measure the progress towards that goal. And so that's why it became apparent that we needed that, particularly in challenging times when you start looking at and making very cautious decisions. When you don't have the end goal in mind and that's not clearly articulated, and the what and the how and all those other pieces in the mission statement, you can inadvertently lose direction. So our current version is that we don't have a vision statement. We do have a mission statement, but if you remember the 4 prongs, the mission statement doesn't fulfill the pronged guidance given to us by NSBA. You can see up on the screen the differences between the vision and mission statement. The vision is the articulated picture. The mission has the purpose, the need, for whom the need is met, and the how-to. And put side by side, you can see the clear distinction and maybe, feel or see or realize how those things become very important. All are necessary. All these building blocks are necessary to have things, and the higher up you go, the more abstract it gets. Okay. What you'll notice on there are things I haven't talked about, like metrics and strategies, and we're going to get to those. And the values, we didn't want to touch the values. You don't touch the values of you. You have a culture. You have your values. You articulated those values. Nobody's going to come in and change your values. And those are part of the guiding force that gives you your understanding of what the vision would be, which then trickles down. Moving forward, as Dr. Ben spoke to, we need a vision and a mission, and we need clearly articulated goal statements, and we need them because he's trying to develop your fiscal sustainability plan. And the reason why we chose the tact we did and the way we went about doing it is because of the limited time we have. We need this language in place to make clear decisions and to have clear guidance. Okay, so the language itself becomes important to us. So we have a few recommendations for the dashboard, which represents symbolically and also very concretely what it is we're supposed to focus on and how we are supposed to do our jobs. So what we really have as our recommendations here is that what we have articulated right now as the mission statement really reads like the ending of a vision statement. When you look at that language, enables all students to succeed in a changing world, we can couple that to an object, and it would read like a nice vision statement that really gets to the point of what we're trying to do. If you notice the language that we're using up there for now what might be the vision statement, and really what was functioning as a vision statement all along but was coined as a mission statement, we would say, and this is our proposal, that our vision is to foster a learning community that enables all students to succeed in a changing world. Okay? And what that does for us is it focuses on a few things. It focuses on the fact that we're fostering something. And we struggle and we haggle and we wrestle over words like that. How does that, and not just me as an English guy, in my past life, before my past life, I was an English teacher for many years. But all the administrators, we sit in a room and we're like, well, what do we want to say? We want to, we inevitably ended up on foster, but it's we want to create. What do we want to do? And we settled on the word foster because of some of the connotations with it. It has a softer appeal. It has a more caring tone. It has the type of place I'd want to send my kids. Learning community, and I mentioned all this in the definitions, the learning community is what we're trying to build. And there's certain definitive characteristics of what a learning community is. It's a place where everyone gets together, they share their opinions, they focus on the data, they make data-informed decisions, all for the benefit of the students. That's what we're trying to build. And why are we doing it? Well, we're enabling students to succeed in a changing world. That we didn't want to touch. We just wanted to make it an object that incorporated more into it so we can visualize what it is we're trying to do. With that, we'd like to recreate the mission statement. And we'd like to propose a mission statement tonight. Remember, the mission statement has to fulfill some prongs. And what we did is we crafted one that we labored over several times. We took a lot of feedback, and we tried to hold true to what was done in the past. And so the mission statement we came up with is for all students to be future ready and meet or exceed established goals, the Boyertown Area School District will implement a coordinated, articulated curriculum and provide personalized, planned instruction aligned with Pennsylvania academic standards. I included in there some definitions because there's a lot of verbiage that's dropped there that people may get confused on, and it's easy to get confused on what future ready means, on what curricula it actually is, on why we're mentioning the Pennsylvania academic standards, and what a learning community is. So I wanted to define those for you and give, so that not only you, but we'd have some clear guidance as to what we're holding true to. Does it fulfill the prongs? Yes. Who are the needs being fulfilled for? All the students we have, every last one of them. Okay? No matter what type of benefits or challenges they bring into the buildings, every one of the students. What's our purpose? Well, the purpose is to provide personalized, planned instruction aligned with Pennsylvania academic standards. And where the rubber starts to hit the road with articulation like that is when I'm evaluating someone. When the building administrators are looking at curriculum, when they're evaluating teachers, when we're working on projects, we know that we're trying to hit every student. We're trying to personalize what we're doing. We're trying to make it planned. Instruction should be planned. It should be collaborative. We should have a goal in mind, and we have a clear set of strategies how to reach that goal. And we understand that what we do is informed heavily, and indeed in some cases just driven by, the academic standards. And I know sometimes people may look at academic standards and say that kind of sounds cold, that you're just talking about English and math. What about all the other things involved? If you really look at the academic standards, there is a host of things in that. It's about all instruction. everything we teach. And we don't just teach English and math and some of those, more core subject areas. There is a lot of instruction going on even outside the classroom.
And if I could jump in to his point, when we really looked at it, because we labored on the concern about just saying academic and how people would think it's only about reading, writing, and math. But when you really looked at it, college and career readiness, all that is defined by the Pennsylvania academic standards. When you look at future ready, it includes the expectation of growth. It includes the student subgroups in there. It includes attendance and those types of things. So those things together really became a holistic approach to what we're supposed to be doing. The challenge that we faced was we did not want to create a mission statement that was about the individuals in the room, because we did not get a chance to go through what would have been a more inclusive process than when you go typically to develop a mission statement. So what we did do when just searching around in other jurisdictions, there were some who tied it directly to what the state said you're supposed to be doing. And as certificated, sworn in, whatever you are, whether teacher, officer, when you become superintendent, assistant superintendent, everything says we're supposed to be doing this. By law, as board members, you're sworn to uphold and make sure that we're successful with this. Future Ready just came out, so it's not going anywhere soon. Standards are updated by the state. And by the way, Future Ready also allows us to have a platform to benchmark ourselves to districts across the Commonwealth if we decide we want to see or say who we want to be like or exceed or do better than. It's already done for us. By a common standard, common data, that we're able to cleanly articulate and communicate to the public. And by the way, it's also in a form that's red, yellow, green, really blue, red, green, up and down arrows, and it's going to be the standard that's already out there. So it becomes easy to articulate and communicate our performance to our constituents also. So it encapsulated a lot of things that were easy. And by the way, some of the verbiage you see in there came from the state code. Again, what we're required to do. The purpose of public schools in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So when someone says, where'd you come up from that from? Well, we can easily articulate where it came from, and there's a reason why it came, in the absence of we could have not having the time to go out to the community and go through a full-fledged process. That is the one piece that was not already available for us to modify, to build off of from the old previous process that was done.
Okay, so beyond that, there are some other areas that we decided to look at. When you look at the dashboard as it currently exists, you have all the priority areas on the left, and you have the metrics of success on the right, and beneath that, of course, you have your core values. So we took a careful look at those. Again, the building blocks for success: values, vision and mission, goals, strategies, and metrics of success. So when we looked at the priority areas and the success metrics, we also found a few challenges for us. Challenge number one is that the current priorities, you have header priorities and then sub-priorities. They're listed as topics and they're not stated as goals. So we decided to take a close look at that and to reimagine them as if they were goal statements. And in some cases, it's kind of a one-for-one substitution. There's really very little change. In other cases, we asked questions about words like effective, and we tried to come up with what we actually saw within the district that we were working towards. Challenge number two is how they're aligned. If you look, and I'm going to slide back a little bit here, if you look at the priority areas and the metrics of success, it's difficult to figure out how they are aligned and which metric is going with which priority. Yeah, you would really have to carefully think about it. And that might not be a bad exercise, but for someone who is looking at that to get guidance, or someone who just wants to see how we're measuring things, it's difficult to figure that out. It's really an activity. Some of those metrics can go with multiple priority areas, and there's really no way to tell what is coordinated with what. So that was another challenge. Another challenge is, how are we sharing, monitoring, celebrating, and revising these? Is there a living document that allows us to show we're actually using those? Because success metrics and goals, which we have stated as priorities, we should be able to clearly match those and to show how the strategies we're implementing are actually being effective with the success metrics that we're utilizing as an indicator of that effectiveness. So that became another challenge for us as we were looking at that. I gave you this quote because, again, it comes from the National School Boards Association, and it talks about data, it talks about results, and it talks about the focus on students, and also how that focus can help us remain focused. So going forward, we tried to reimagine again what the dashboard would look like if we took their guidance. And so we had some proposed changes, and I'm going to talk about these. I'll go through them as quickly as possible. We wanted to remove the metrics and the sub-priorities from the dashboard, take them off, and I'll talk about why. First, they kind of clutter the document a little bit, and they throw the focus off. The document has a lot of information on there. The information alignment isn't necessarily clear, and I don't know if people would actually take the time to sift through it as something you pass in a room or you see displayed as something that's supposed to catch your eye and immediately impact you. We wanted to simplify the priorities into goal statements and remove some of the sub-priorities. We wanted to match the new metrics to building targets and strategies. We wanted to house the target, strategies, and metrics on a separate action plan document that would be useful for each building and then would become a reporting mechanism for you to show that growth. And we wanted to utilize the action plans to discuss and share that progress. So we actually wanted to remove some of that and put it in a more living document. What that would look like is you have this longer lasting guiding document, which would become the dashboard that would have the values, the vision, the mission, and the overall goals, which are the restated priorities. And the other document would have something that is more living, more changeable, more frequently updated, because your targets in each building get looked at every year. The strategies might change year by year and sometime within a year, particularly if you're using metrics that show that your strategies are not effective. Those should change. And your metrics, of course, should change. So when you actually publish those on a document that is static and will not change for a number of years, it might say something about how we're measuring things and the strategies we're using that we might not want to say, because it becomes something that is not going to be changed, whereas we might want to change it. So we just took a fresh look at some old news, and we decided to take the current priorities and restate them into goal statements. So where we say responsible and effective use of resources, we changed that to data-informed use of resources to justify the effectiveness of it. So when we're talking about responsibility, we're talking about the fact that we're looking at data and driving our decisions based upon what the information says. Positive, safe, and healthy learning environments, we left that the same because we felt like that's exactly what we're trying to do. It's not just about safety, it's not just about healthy, it's about remaining positive, even in times of challenge. What we did for the current priorities, where we talk about learning and growth for student success and continuous growth for district personnel, we restated that for, first of all, because it's kind of the same thing. We're just looking at two different subgroups. But if we talk about everyone again as a learning community, that's everyone. That's me, that's you, that's the students, that's the parents. We're all subject to continuous growth. Okay? And we all want that growth to be personalized and research-based. And so when we look at a clearly articulated growth aspect, such as research-based and personalized, it allows us to make clear decisions based upon research, not something we're coming up with, but is based upon research as to what direction we want to go. And it simplifies it. And finally, effective communication and collaboration. We talked about open communication, active involvement, and purposeful collaboration. And I think, listening to the committee meeting prior to this, it sounds like that's exactly what you're working on. You're working on open communication. You're working on purposeful collaboration. You are doing that work and listening to what's going on in the buildings. They're doing that work also. Values, we keep them the same. Those are your values. That's the values of the community. But we did ask, and we thought that maybe they could be displayed in a more prominent, aesthetically pleasing manner. Currently, we have them in the bottom right corner, and almost as though they're minimized when everything we do is built upon our values. This is a value-driven business. And it's really not a business. I mean, it's a passion for me. But it's value-driven. It's what we love to do, and you got to know who you are before you set yourself to these things. So we would like that more prominently displayed. So this is what we have. What we have and what we decided to do. It's the great unveiling, yes. It's good theater. Current dashboard. Unveil, unveil. Yes. There's a new one, at least in our imagining of it. It's simple. It retains the integrity of the old document, remains faithful to the work that was done, places the values up on the top, and it has a reimagined mission statement. Also, the One Boyertown motto is now at the bottom. So, yeah, I like it. I'm not a visual artist or anything like that, but I like it. I didn't do that, but I think it's pretty cool. Simple, but powerful. I like the way that we put the values at the top. That's your foundation. Everything else trickles down from there. So there's our new reimagining. Where the rubber really hits the road, and I'm getting to the end of this, is how we take what are the goals and where it becomes on this separate document what we now track and utilize for performance and growth. So targets are now developed, and they have been. We just kind of revised the document to be more in line with what we're doing with these priorities into goals. Each building has different targets. They always have an ELA and a math one. We have SEL targets this year for the buildings, and they can come up with other building-specific targets that are kind of coming out of those goals. And on this document now, we have the strategies, we have the metrics, and then we have check-in points, which become benchmark targets. Within those benchmark targets, the goal is to put one of those color-coded red, green, blue, so that you can look at those quarter targets or those trimester targets and visually, right off the bat, tell if we've met it or if we haven't. And that allows for a living document to become changeable, alterable, based upon conditions. So we can tell if we've met our benchmarks, we're meeting our metrics, the strategies are becoming successful, because those things should change. This is an example of one for grades 4 through 5 on text-dependent analysis. And what we hope to do is build in there the visualization of their progress monitoring. So that document would be living. It would have the metrics. It would have the strategies. It would have all that information that is now currently crowded onto the old dashboard. Okay? That would become something that would be presented to you to monitor the progress towards achieving those goals, to fulfilling our mission and getting towards our vision. The end is just the timeline. This is the work we did. We had an OTL proposal. We had a cabinet discussion. Went to the administrative retreat with our building level administrators and our cabinet administrators. They grappled with some of these goals. They came up with strategies and metrics. Then we brought it to the data retreat, building level work to develop action plans, which are currently in the process and are being revised. The initial presentation here, and I believe the hope is to submit for board approval on the 27th, if I'm correct. I believe that's the end.
All right.
So, Mr. Savage, tonight is obviously to get feedback from you all, and then we rush to, if there's things that need to be tweaked, they're done, so we can get it back to you, so we can get it on the docket on the 27th, because then we have to take this information and make sure that we're creating vertical alignment as best possible. Some things had to be done prior to this to function as a district, so it won't be as clean as we'd like this year. But the goal is regularly have some vertical alignment, what happens between the expectation of myself, the expectation of the cabinet members, the principals in their schools, and then also start building in as he said, a reporting mechanism throughout the year that you all can see how schools are doing. Also, then of course, ultimately, annually you'll have the Future Ready report, which will talk about the district. We have some further conversations about what else besides that we think should be included in our district report to the board. But definitely a report, because that's what is going to be pushed out to the public, so you can start seeing, and then a Future Ready should also be something that guides what happens at the building level. We're not moving the needle in ELA because the state has had performance targets. Well, we want to progress and exceed those also. Notice I didn't say meet, I said exceed. The attendance, they have the math, they have career readiness, and a bunch of those things that are already laid out. And I think if we do those things well, we move back also, as we've talked early on, from now being a B-rated district by niche to back in A category, which is how people pick where they want to go to school.
All right. As the chair, I'm going to take the opportunity to make the first statement. Sorry, guys. But I think I just have to say bravo to you guys. This is exactly what I live and breathe at work, and I'm getting ready to do a vision missioning with my team, and the same background that I have is exactly what you have. So I was writing the same thing at the same time too. So it was great to see, and it was clear that there's so much collaboration and great thinking that went into this. So thank you all. I don't have a lot of comments. I have one, but I'm going to let my fellow board members speak first. But thank you so much for bringing this to us. Mr. Elsier.
Thank you. Well, first off, I feel the passion from the presentation and in the room, and having discussions with Dr. Bedden over the last several months, the passion for a need to do this. I also like the fact that, and I think you used the term respect for what was done, because there was truly a tremendous amount of work put into that for those that were involved or here in the district. I think there were actually some board members who sat on community groups while that was formulated. And it's good stuff. It's still relevant. It's not outdated. And I like the fact of changing wordsmithing and moving the values more in the forefront, things like that. All good stuff. You kind of go, why didn't we do that back then? But anyway, nonetheless, we evolve, and it's all about continuous improvement. So I love it. I know that one of the asks of the board, just in conversation and some of the discussion in our governance training, was, hey, put something together. Because for 9 people to try to put it together, could be a lot of chefs in that kitchen trying to make that dinner. So I think it's great. It's also kept what has been worded our mission statement, but truly it is more of a vision, and kept the respect for that, and that has guided us as a district I think these next steps that we're talking about will guide us even better, further, faster, new and improved, whatever term you want to put to it. The alignment is so important. Having worked in a corporate structure for many years, alignment is key, and I think this will keep us alignment, and I hope I'm within 3 minutes. So the last piece, little levity there. Also, the fact that we tied it into Pennsylvania, so we're not like reinventing the wheel and, well, we're different, So I like that. The last two things I would add is I do like a term called KPIs. Dr. Bennett and I have had some conversation. He sent me over some really good material on key performance indicators. I think here it's targets, but I think that's something that I want to continue to try to evolve as a board, as a district. So yeah, you have targets, but then you have almost like a one-pager, like here's where we're at with curriculum, here's where we're at with finance, facilities, and what would be those KPIs. So I think this can be something we can build on that. And the last thing I would just say is I think the other piece of all this work is how it's now communicated. Assuming the board endorses it, I'm certainly all for it. I'm in. But I think the other piece is how it's going to be communicated, not only within the buildings and posted, up, but to parents, to students, teachers, of course, but even community members, so that everyone's, again, communicated to. So thank you very much.
Other comments from the board? Mrs. Denon?
So yes, I echo some of the things that Mr. Elsier said, and I am glad that we didn't kind of reinvent the wheel, because there was a lot of time put into developing what's on the wall currently. So I appreciate that we really tweaked it and we consolidated it, because I think that's what we needed, because it was a lot. But not to say you don't need the metrics and the targets and the goals and all that. So I think that was really great. And I think the collaboration is obvious, and I think that's what Boyertown has been about for a long time, that we do collaborate, and the leadership starts at the top. So I think, I thank Dr. Bedden for getting everybody together, and I know that without the team it wouldn't have happened, but I do appreciate everybody kind of taking Dr. Bedden's lead and working so hard to put this together. And I agree that as a board we could come up with ideas, but this is we're so much better served by you guys doing it for us. So I appreciate that. One technical thing: text-dependent analysis. Is that the new term for reading comprehension?
No, it's an aspect of.
It's just a technical thing. It's just a technical thing.
You need a microphone.
Microphone, please.
So text-dependent analysis really has students looking at text and digging deeper into those critical thinking skills that are necessary, not only to analyze text, but really to analyze the world around them. But it's a component that digs deeper than just simple reading comprehension. So it's deeper understanding of how you might interpret a text and respond to that text. Really embeds a lot of real-world skills that they're going to use in their careers and beyond. Help?
And ironically enough, the example that's given was crafted by Dr. Obero as well, as far as giving an example, because it really is a K through 12 issue. It's not an issue that's just stagnant in certain grade levels. I mean, the foundation of the written component of it really starts at kindergarten. So we tried to give an example that was really relevant, that spans across all of our grade levels. So again, just for a reference point.
Yes, Mr. Boyer.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Den, are you? Well, thank you very much. I just have a quick question and a comment. My question is regarding Pennsylvania academic standards. Dr. Bedden commented that there are a large number of academic standards in various subjects, and correct me if I'm wrong, there are academic standards in Pennsylvania for many, many curricular areas, not just reading and math, what we normally consider the core subject.
Yes, that was, and maybe I didn't articulate it well, that we labored about that word academic in there, and not only from, okay, we know that there's more, and we knew that, and but we were concerned that we toyed with taking it out because the average person may not, and in the end, we said, why are we taking it out? It is all encompassing. It is what we're supposed to be using and adhering to, and we just need to define it to make sure they know that. And instead of backing away from something, let's just make sure they understand what that something is and be true to it and do what we're supposed to do. But it is absolutely more than just reading, writing, the basic. I mean, it encompassed everything, even got social emotional learning incorporated into it. So we ultimately said, if it does what we're saying it's supposed to do, then we're going to stick with it. But we got to own, I think Ms. Elster said, the communication piece, articulation piece, so the person in a traditional sense doesn't just get stuck on the word academic and think it's just the core subject areas.
Because you want to hold your teachers accountable and your principals in subjects like health, PE, art.
Well, absolutely. So that it's not, again, a Dana Benton, it's not a Mike Stout, it's not a Dr. Obera or Miss Torsia. It is the academic standards that is why we're driving the decision making when we're talking about performance, when we're talking about success or not success. I hate to say failure, so not success. It's what we're supposed to be doing. When we're talking about where we're spending our money. Is this going to help us meet that goal? Or is this, when someone asks to spend money on something, what's that student outcome? We're trying to push everything back to that because we're in tough times. And it shouldn't be something arbitrarily that just because I like it. That's not what should drive the final decision. And hopefully, again, if that foundation is strong, districts that have been successful over years actually build a strong plan, and it doesn't matter who's sitting in the seat. It's the plan that it drives. And then boards that are smart, if they got a good plan, when they replace the superintendent, for example, they pick someone who can continue to build upon the plan. Companies do that. When a company establishes a brand and their mission and vision, they often look for the person who can either continue to achieve it, or in some cases they say take it to the next level. Now, unless it's broken, then they get some, something different as they rebuild it.
Well, hopefully we won't be changing superintendents soon. Let's hope not. Anyway, I just wanted to make one really quick comment. I think the presentation was excellent, and the content was excellent as well. So thank you very much, and I can't wait to dive into this some more. Thanks.
Are there board comments?
I have a comment.
Yes, please, Mr. Foose.
So I have Blackboard open at home and following along, but obviously not being there to see the presentation, you would think there might be a little bit lacking in visuals, but what I may be lacking in visuals, Mr. Stout certainly made up for in passion, and that really came through. So I echo what others were saying, that he clearly, the administrative team clearly has a passion for getting this in place, and that was very clear. And I know that there was a lot of work done in the past, which was alluded to, but I think that was well maintained, and it just puts a lot of that into a more structured and actionable format that also really gives us all a common language and common set of tools at our disposal to talk about things, and I think that will help in the long term. So I really appreciate them putting this together. I mean, I think the administration has been asked, a fairly new administration with the new superintendent has been asked to deal with some pretty heavy and complicated topics without this, and to their credit, they've done a great job meeting, I think, the spirit of these items, but having this, I think, will really help us going forward. So I appreciate all the work that was put into it.
Are there board comments? Yes, Mr. Altiero.
Just two more quick comments. One is, I think one of the items that really has stuck with me from our governance training in our first session was, as a board, staying focused on the big picture, the big stuff, the proverbial, from 50,000 feet. And I think having this will help us as a board and future boards going forward with governance. And at the end of the day, it really comes down, that whole alignment piece is, what's talked about in the boardroom, does it get to the classroom? And I think by having this set up with the goals and targets, that'll help ensure that what we're talking about here and adjustments, action that we vote on, then does get transferred to the classroom and benefits the students. And that's why I really like this whole piece. Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Benton?
To connect the dot to Mr. Elsier's comment, if you go further and look in the board docs, you'll notice that typically you're supposed to attach an agenda item to a goal. And once these are in place, every agenda item that's put on there should be supporting or connected to a goal. And obviously the vision and mission with the goal. So you'll see actually, if you go back and look at that format, that template, it actually has mechanisms. So it will help us also from, to your point, this level, to really say, okay, is this really something we should be talking about at the board meeting, and how does it really fit within it? So this moves us closer to more effectively using a tool also that we're paying for, and it also allows the public again to see the connection, because they'll see it on the agenda item. And we're able to more clearly articulate too, when you're talking about the spending of money, which goal is that money being spent on to support?
Great point. I was going to also comment that, this is a great start, and getting board approval on this is a great start, right? It's a first step. And really, we need to build a communication plan, as Mr. Elsier said, but I think we want to get to the point where every employee is inspired by this vision and sees how their work contributes to the vision and the mission. And to your point, every board member should be inspired by the vision and mission and see how our work relates to that as well. I think one key is moving forward is having this framework persist. So you need to build the processes around how are you going to set those action goals? How are you going to measure those action goals? How are you going to communicate that? But I think you've got this. So I had one piece of constructive, or I hope you see it as constructive feedback, and that was around the vision. So can you put up the vision? So in my understanding of a vision, it's supposed to be kind of aspirational. Where do you see yourself in the future? And one of the things that I remember in my training long ago about it was, if you saw your school district in the newspaper 5 years from now, what would you want it to say? I'm just laughing because probably not some of the things that we see in the newspaper today. And so the vision.
There we go.
Yeah, so to me, I'm glad we kept enables all students to succeed in a changing world. I think this board and all the time that I've been on it has been behind that piece. But to foster a learning community, what does that mean to foster, and how will we know if we've gotten there? I would suggest something more like, do we want to be a leading learning community? How do we want to be compared to other districts in the counties, in the world? I remember a former late board member, John Crossley, used to say, I might be misquoting him a little, but he would say, I want to graduate the most educated students in the world. And he would say that all the time. And it felt inspirational, like, okay, why not? We can do this. So I think that's what our vision statement would get to. So my suggestion would be to make it a little bit more aspirational and state it in a way like, where do we want to be in terms of do we just want to be a school district who has a learning community that enables all students, or do we want to be the best learning community? My only feedback. Everything else I think looks great to me.
Great points. And for the sake of our work session, and this is why we're here, maybe it should say to be the best learning community. It's aspirational. It's where you want to be. So I would, not to throw out all the hard work that was done, but maybe, I know there was some, I think in the presentation even, there was some back and forth
No,
about
th-
foster.
Feedback's important.
I don't
Yeah.
think it's throwing out. I hope
Yeah.
not. But I
Yeah.
just want to know what your reaction to that
Yeah,
is
to
as
be
well.
the best learning community.
I think there's always room for higher levels of aspiration. So if we took if you guys wanted to work on some of the object, the vision object, yes, that'd just be my opinion. Absolutely.
And that was part of our discussion, and one of the items that we were spending a lot of time on was just even learning community. What does a learning community mean? Because a lot of people, in the context of the classroom, in the context of a building, in the context of a district, in the context of what goes beyond to our community, outside of our school community, which is part of the whole global community. So there was a lot of conversation about that, and it's certainly very constructive feedback to determine what that really looks like. It's not an easy, and when you start mixing words, it starts changing something else. So we were spending a lot of time on the verbiage that went behind it.
Okay. Mrs. Denon?
Yeah, just a thought about the learning community. When it said learning community, I kind of was in my mind thinking about a session I went to on community schools. But so it's not to be confused with community schools. But I don't think I think except for people who are kind of in the education community and follow education, I don't think they would confuse that. But you're not in any way trying to say our vision is to create a community, the community
No.
schools, but a learning community which involves more than just the students in our building. Okay.
Any other feedback? Yes, Mr. Elsier.
Well, to that point, maybe it's to provide the best education that enables all. I mean, I know we're just kind of wordsmithing here, and we could just keep going on and on. But I mean, maybe if that's a concern, I mean, ultimately, we're trying to provide the best education that then enables all students. So I'm good either way. I'm not opposed to learning community, but I would just throw that out there. Thank you.
Well, as long as we're on the whole learning community, I do like the learning community because it does talk about what it is, and maybe the word community is not strong enough because people just think, well, it's a learning place, but they are referring to a community, teachers, students, the community itself, parents.
I like the learning community too. Mr. Boyer?
I'm fine with the terminology. I think learning community to me means more than just the school. It's everybody. So I'm fine with it, with the language as is. I'm not against changing it, but it's fine for me.
So for the sake of time, what I'm walking away with is a more aspirational term to and still keep learning community and the rest, but something more, to be the best, the greatest, whatever. But so we got it. We'll tweak it and send something out.
Awesomest. I saw that. Awesomest.
just modifiers. That's fine. Yeah, really what we're talking about is between the A and a learning community can slide in a modifier. We can change that the foster part to something that is tangibly there. So
Yeah, Mr. Stout, I don't know if our English teacher's going to like awesomest.
I'm going to love this. You can start wordsmithing.
Yes, Mr. Elsier.
Well, I just feel compelled to share a little levity here. So there's a younger generation term I just learned about recently, and this guy said, it's relevant. Oh, it's relevant.
Is this a personal reflection?
He said, I'm a goat. He said, I'm the goat. I go, and I never heard that.
I got that title one time.
Yeah, greatest of all time.
Cool.
So depending on who you're with, you could say you're a goat, greatest of all time. So maybe we want to be. No, never mind. Thank you.
That's good.
All right. Mrs. Deeroff, do you have any comments?
No, I think everything was fine. I think Mr. Staff did an excellent job and his staff.
Great, thank you. And Mr. Foos, do you have any further comments?
I think Mr. Elsier might want to stay off of Twitter.
It was real world live.
No, I again appreciate all the work that went into this.
Thanks. Ms. Nyman, any comments? All right. Anyone else? All right. Well, thank you. Did you get what you needed from us, do you think?
Yes, and again, I'm walking away with everything's good. The two things that deliverables we have is a little more aspirational with the Foster and something for learning. And then we're going to add more clarity to the district level tie-in that was brought up earlier about, you saw the building level targets of how we're going to communicate future ready and or if there's anything else for district level reporting.
Thank you. Now it's committee comment. Is there any comment on any other topic related to the Joint Finance, Facilities, and Operations, Educational Technology, and Student Services Committee? Okay, seeing none. Announcements, our meeting dates can be found on the website. I don't really have a list of them in front of us. I know we have a regular meeting coming up, though, August 27th. Okay, so that is our next meeting. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Mrs. Denon and Mr. Boyer seconds. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.